Welcome, and we will go ahead and get started. We have several meetings that we're doing more as a webinar format so that those ad hoc members can jump on kind of whenever and watch the material. So we hope that they will be taking advantage of that. But this morning we have two special guests that will be presenting, starting with Dan Whistler with Train, who's going to tell us about NC3, and then we'll follow that up with Bill Nicely, who will be telling us about the Kauffman Foundation's Real World Learning Initiative. So with that, we'll turn it over to Dan and learn from you this morning about certifications and NC3 initiatives.
All right, Shelley, thank you. Appreciate it. Let me pull this up here. All right. Well, thank you for the invitation to share more on this. Timing is great. Last week was the Virtual Leadership Summit with NC3, the annual updates. One of the exciting parts with NC3 is it's a industry certifications. It's a bridge between industry and the classroom. And as we worked with the Governor's Council and we've talked about building public-private partnerships and having business and industry help guide the education process. It's a great connection. So that's literally my role now, having been a classroom teacher, is I serve as a bridge between industry and the classroom. The industry or the companies, corporations you see here are all industry partners. Train was the second industry partner joining in with NC3. Snap-on is the first. NC3 is a nonprofit organization, 10 plus years old now and rapidly expanding. And it ties in very closely. Last week, Natalie and Stacy were sharing more with KSD and school redesign and the work-based learning continuum. These are opportunities to take what KSD has been doing in adding more career connections, and then working with the Governor's Council Diploma Plus, really creating a target and adding more to the conversation. Kristen Brighton of Higher Paths visited with me last week about writing a blog for Higher Paths so that students and parents can learn more about what are market value assets in the industry certifications. What does it mean if our seniors are graduating Diploma Plus? And I like to think of these as career accelerators. It really does help open the door for these career opportunities. In February, our Kansas CTE conference, Dr. Watson shared the emphasis, the goal, the focus of providing CTE for all students. It's been a part of the school redesign process. Blake Flanders with Kansas Board of Regents has been very involved. In December of 2018. The Board of Regents, working through the TEA, Technical Education Authority, has actually, there is a statewide agreement with KBOR and NC3 to buy down the cost of membership to help promote career and technical education and provide more opportunities, not just at the post-secondary level. High school, middle schools can all be a part of NC3. So there is, again, we're putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And as I mentioned earlier, Train was a second member of NC3. And Dr. Watson invited Train to be an industry partner working with KSDE. So I feel like all of the pieces are really coming together to help make all of this happen. As I mentioned, NC3 is a nonprofit and it's working, it's nationwide. So what we are working to do is to provide more career, it's definitely skills-based, competency-based on what are the needs in industry and how can we help our students gain more of this training. There are two different levels that schools can be members. Leadership schools are able to offer an array of certifications, working with a number of industry partners. You see definitely a higher level number, over 800, almost 900 certification centers. A lot of schools get started as certification centers, and they're able to offer some of the introductory certifications. I'll share more on those. A number of high schools and middle schools, again, are certification centers and can begin providing more of the career awareness and exploration and helping students gain and be able to demonstrate that they've recognized or they've met the assessment levels for industry as far as what the skill sets the industries are looking for. As you see here, again, a number of industry partners, and this list continues to grow. A lot of those leadership schools will start with a couple of these and then continue to add on as they have more grants or work with more regional industries in the area. So here's nationwide, as I mentioned, Kansas right now, we're at 24, and this is a combination of leadership schools and the certification centers. If you look at Tennessee, you notice they're over 120. Tennessee has a strong program going with certification centers and offering a number of industry certifications for their secondary schools or middle schools. So it's an area I'm excited to see Kansas exploring and looking at the possibilities of how we can do more of this. And I'll share more of that as we go through. The certification centers, it is free for a school to be a certification center. The industry certifications that they're able to offer, if we look at Snap-on, precision measuring instruments, torque fundamentals, multimeter, in the area of electricity with Festo, fundamentals of electricity, AC/DC, 3M, the PPE, we've heard a lot about that obviously this past year with COVID and what are the safety protocols we should be following, or just industry. We look at OSHA, what are the safety procedures we should follow in all areas. And then with Train for the certification centers, a brand new certification as of January, data analytics. We definitely live in a world now of big data, and it's across all industries. So this isn't specific just to energy or energy efficiency. This is a certification that explores how data analytics is literally found in every one of these industries. So we've been doing Train the Trainer, which is professional development, since January, and have trained, I think now we're at about 65 instructors that we've trained for this new certification, and it's building from there. So these are all stackable certifications. And by that, I mean, a lot of these, they may be 6 to 12 hours of instruction. So one of the areas I see is opportunities for Kansas to explore, for us to discuss with Jumpstart Kansas, with KSDE, is how do we blend, how can we offer these stackable certifications, especially in our smaller schools. When I was teaching in Sterling, I was the one in a 1.5 science teacher department. There's only so many classes I can teach. There's only so many offerings I can have in my class schedule. But if we can take some of these needed skill sets and integrate them with existing classes and a math class and a science class, then we're going to be able to provide more students more opportunities to graduate Diploma Plus, to earn these certifications that are needed in industry. And a lot of these, as we see, for example, I mentioned precision measuring instruments. It's across all industries. So it might be one we were talking in one of our last Advantage Kansas meetings about the aviation industry in Wichita. Well, precision measurement will be used if it's a small town. The same tools can be used in the ag implement dealer. So these skill sets, again, when students are able to earn these industry certifications, it can open up the door for a number of industries all across the state. So a lot of career opportunities. So this is, again, an assortment of the different ones that are offered through these various industries. And I will say, again, it's industry-based training and it's industry-based assessment or certification. So it's nice if I'm the classroom teacher, I'm actually receiving professional development training from the industry, and then I'm using the industry materials to help teach the class and to assess the students. So it's, like I said, it's very much a bridge between industry and the classroom, with industry helping to lead the way. Two of the latest, we have a lot of STEM programs that have been working with students developing apps and doing coding. Swift is now offering certifications that are tied in with those. And then the latest that was piloted this last year, we hear a lot from KSD as far as the need, not just for schools to teach content. It's not just science and math and English. We hear a lot of emphasis about employability skills, the word cloud that's been shared about what are the soft skills, the essential skills that students really need in the employment world across all industries. There's now a works certification, the Micro Foundation, where students can actually demonstrate and receive certification that, again, it shows they've demonstrated the ability in the classroom, that they've developed those skills that are much needed in employment. So as I mentioned, these are stackable certifications. It is hands-on. Some of these are virtual. A lot of these though do involve tools from industry. So the students receive the training on the tools that are being used in industry today. As a classroom science teacher, I was limited on what I had in my inventory. So this is one way that industry can help make sure students are being trained on what's being found in the workplace. And probably the biggest emphasis, there's no cost for these certifications for students. So once a school is a member of NC3, either as a certification center to get started, or they become a leadership school, then they are able to offer, once the teachers had the training, what's called train the trainer from NC3. And it's just like if I were to go to SDAC or Smoky Hill or Greenbush and receive an in-service training as an educator. In this case, as a classroom teacher, I'm being trained by someone in industry. But once we've done that, that teacher can begin offering these certifications at no cost to students, and they can train an unlimited number of students using those industry materials. As I mentioned, it's competency-based, skills-based. So on the back of the certifications, it actually lists the competencies that the students have acquired in completing this certification. So if they're going in for a job interview, the employer can actually look at the back of the certification and know specifically what skill sets that student has been assessed on in earning this certification. So that goes across, again, for all of these stackable certifications. This last week, Wichita State University with WSU Tech was recognized as the #1 school in the country. They had students earn almost 1,900 certifications this past year. And I'll emphasize that was in a year that was very unusual for all of us in dealing with COVID and making the transition from, in some cases, virtual or in person to virtual, and how to combine the two to have the hands-on assessment. So WSU Tech was actually the leading school in the country as far as the number of students that they certified this past year. But it isn't just Wichita, it isn't just our big cities. Ben Shears, member of our Governor's Council, president of Northwest Kansas Technical College, was recognized at the Leadership Award, the work he's doing with Northwest Tech. He and the faculty out there are expanding the number of certifications, the corporate trainer partners they're working with through NC3. So it's exciting to see when we talk about Governor's Council and equity being one of the areas of focus, these are ways we can bring more CTE opportunities to schools of all sizes. And one of the areas we're working on that right now, Jeff Travis, one of our leaders in Kansas, as far as the school redesign process, Jeff is leading the way with Beloit USD 273. They are forming a consortium of 4. These are 4 school districts, small school districts in north central Kansas, that are partnering together to be able to combine resources, share resources, and be able to offer a starting list of certifications with their students, and then be able to expand on it from there. So we talked about precision measurement, data analytics, the FESTO, electricity. I refer to electricity or energy as the lifeblood in our society. Man, if the electricity goes out, we're all in trouble. We need more electricians, whether that's in a small school, whether that's in working on the grid, energy generation, all of that is essential. Festo, again, offers that electricity certification to help get students started in a career opportunity in there, and that'll be one of them that they're offering. I mentioned the precision measurements. Here's an example. Tennessee they have a number of certification centers. Here's a couple of their high schools that certified. They issued over 350 or 354 and 444 certifications to students last year with these 6 certifications that are part of the precision measurements. So if we look at again, how we can integrate some of these, if I open up this industry certification here, just a second. So this sample curriculum, when a student takes, or when an instructor takes the NC3 training, they are trained on the industry training manual. So we can go through and look at, whoops, I hit the wrong button, sorry. So we can go through, the instructors are trained on this, and this becomes the manual that instructors are able to then use in teaching the class. So it's part of the industry helping to guide the education process and saying, here's the skills that are needed. A little review of the industry, the corporate team partner. So students are learning more about the employers, the corporations, companies that are out there that are using and needing these certifications. And then it starts with safety. So we go back to, again, the OSHA requirements or anything along those lines. In this case, tape and rule. So I look from a standpoint, if students are working on fractions, here's a way that they can actually be working on as soon as this loads. So now they're using industry tools as they're working on fractions, and they can be, we're meeting the standards that are already a part of a lot of our classes. If it's a math class, or working on standards, working on, or fractions, working on decimals, in this case, getting into calipers. We start talking in industry about tolerances, and now the students are using math and they're getting the real world application at the same time. Again, thanks to industry, these instruction manuals are part of the resources that after an instructor has taken the training, the trainer, they've completed the assessment. Now these instructors have used to these training manuals in teaching the class. So if I'm back in the classroom, I'm not having to figure out how do I do this. That's already a part of the process as these certifications are put together. So this is just an example of, again, the precision measuring instruments, as far as what the teacher is able to work with and what the students are learning as they go through these certifications. So when we talk about graduating diploma plus, here's an example of where we can help students in schools of all sizes be able to have more opportunities to earn these certifications. If we're going to talk about CTE for all students, again, we're in smaller schools especially, it can be a challenge to offer some pathways. Well, if we can identify the skill sets that are needed in industry and find ways to integrate those with existing staff and existing classes, and we're meeting the standards, then it's a win-win for everybody, most importantly, our students. A year ago, this article came out, the Career Opportunities Data Analytics, looking at skills that are needed as we came out of the pandemic. Number one, data science. Having been a high school teacher, a science teacher, it was already one of the areas that I was working to cover with students. When we give a state assessment, or when the students take the ACT test, the science section especially looks at it, can students analyze charts and graphs? Well, then in number two, communication. After they've been able to analyze them, can they communicate? Can they tell the story that's found in the data? Creativity was number three. And then, no surprise, we live in a highly technical world, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. Train has worked with C3. As I mentioned, we have a brand new, this is actually the first in a series of certifications that's being developed, harnessing the power of data. So this certification, it's a 10-hour certification for students. The training is a 6-hour training. So it's just like if I were to take a day and go to SDAC or Greenbush, something like that. In one day of training, the industry walks the instructors through the course, and then the course itself is again a 10-hour course. So to give you an example of what this data analytics cert looks like, this certification uses a free software program called Tableau. So in terms of cost to schools that would like to offer this certification, if they're a certification center, there's no cost. They can sign up through NC3. There would be a cost to have the instructor trained. It's approximately $400. And then using existing school computers, this free software program can be downloaded. Again, it's called Tableau. If I click on this text file here, I'm just going to import a large data set. So this is, again, it's across all industries. So this one happens to be a honeybee data set. We talk about working with big data. You can see this is a very large data set. It looks at how much honey is being produced, the cost of the price per pound. It looks at insecticides that are being used. So now if we want to work with students and say, okay, what What are the stories that we can find in the data? Or maybe if I'm working for an employer, maybe I've been given a specific assignment and I'm supposed to look at the impact of insecticides or price per pound, the law of supply and demand, look at economics. Well, I can go down here just to demonstrate how this software program, how this tool works. I'm going to open up a spreadsheet. And if I want to look, for example, these are called data pills here when they turn green like this. So I can grab one of these if I want to look at years and I want to look at the trend in terms of what was happening with our honey production. Just like that, I've created a chart. Here's a graph that shows, okay, our trend over time, we're producing less honey. Now, if we want to work with students again on just learning how to analyze and read charts and graphs, talking about the x-axis and the y-axis, I can reverse these data pills. Now, that graph is the exact same information. So it's not that that graph is wrong, but that graph probably isn't now the most effective way to show trend over time. So if I reverse and I put the data pills back the way they were, and now I have the years down on the x-axis down below, now it's much easier to see, again, that decrease in terms of production over time. If I want to add and look at some other variables, I mentioned economics. If I want to look and see what was happening to the price of that honey over time, I can add a second, pull up a second data pill. I've built a second graph, but now I have two different graphs. They have a different range on the y-axis. They're both shown in blue. Over here, this show me part with Tableau, when we do these trainings, think of this as a virtual toolbox. And these are different tools that I have to work with. So if I want to now, if I click on this toolbox right here, I now combine those two graphs. And now I have price per pound in blue, and I can clearly see that as there was less honey being produced, then I can see the price went up. Well, let's say I want to look at that with one line graph, one bar graph. We talk about creativity. If I'm the author and I'm working to tell the story that I'm finding in the data, now I have some creative license, so to speak, in terms of what's the best visual to help me share this story, to explain the story that I find in the data. So students go through and they can create a graph like that. We can keep that. Let's say I want to open up another one that, let's say now I want to look at where the honey's being produced. I can pull over state. And in this case, I can bring up my total production. And I've created a bar chart. Now that probably isn't the most effective way to tell the story. But if I come over here now and I click on this regional map, again, these are the tools that are built into the toolbox. So now I can go through and I can change. If those circles are a little small, now it's very easy to see when it's a regional analysis. Now I can quickly see by the size of the bubble, I can tell North Dakota has the largest circle, they're producing the most honey. If I wanted to go back with, again, the economic side of things, I can bring price per pound over here and I can add a variable. Oops, something happened. I lost my circles. Sorry about that. Let me get back to it. There we go. So I can go over and I can add another variable and I can get a different change in terms of the color intensity. So it's one of those that didn't take, sorry. Try that one more time. I lost my data pill here. But I can go through and drag these data pills around. I can create a variety of charts and graphs that then help me tell. No. There we go. So now I've changed not just the size of the circles, but the intensity of it. And these are interactive. So we were going through on Friday of last week, Natalie and Stacy were talking about the work-based learning and being able to use digital portfolios, the growth portfolios, the graduation portfolios. In this case, students are creating a dashboard to tell the story It's a digital dashboard. So here's a certification, and they could actually add this digital dashboard into that portfolio and be able to tell the story. It becomes part of their resume. So as we look at all of these as far as opportunities to, again, provide more Diploma Plus opportunities, chances for students to earn certifications, and it scales up from there. And at Washburn Tech University in Topeka and at WSU Tech, we actually have the climate and energy control labs. This is more specialized training where we can get into, in this case, our building automation certification, building automation systems. We can't train our technicians fast enough in this area. Now, one of the things I share with students and parents when I do career fairs, this is an 11-month program if students are attending full time. So as compared to starting with a 4-year degree, here's an example of where students in less than a year could earn an industry certification that has virtually 100% employment rates as far as placement rates upon graduation, earning this certification. But it doesn't have to stop there. Train is an example of one of many companies that provides tuition reimbursement. So let's say this person wants to go on and complete a 4-year engineering degree. Train is one company of many that would help do that. So it's a bit of a paradigm shift. Again, we talk about a lot of the careers that are out there today require at least some post-secondary skill training, and NC3 is working to help meet the need in that area. So with that, I would like to stop, open up if there are questions, comments. I'll leave the screen share on if there's anything I need to go back to just a second. So Shelley or anyone else, if there's questions.
Thank you very much. I'll let others go first with their questions, and then I have several.
Okay.
Dan, I'm curious if those certifications and credentials you talked about, some of the colleges or higher ed institutions that were doing good work in that area, is anyone tracking those for high school students?
NC3 tracks that. They have the information as far as certifications, which specific certifications are being earned through which, whether it's secondary or post-secondary.
Be interesting.
Yeah, again, that's all tracked through NC3, and this is one area right now. With KSD, our CTE pathways are designed more around semester-long courses. That's a little bit hard, and that's where some of the funding comes in as well, with weighted funding for CTE classes at the level 2 and level 3. But this is one opportunity or one possibility to help open the door for industry certifications, especially in our smaller schools.
Yeah, exactly. That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any others?
This is Jean Clifford. I did have a question on the consortium of schools.
Yes.
So is each school picking a different certification and then allowing other students to go to that class?
No.
How does that work?
What they're doing is they're training instructors in the different certifications that they're starting with. And then for the certs that have hands-on tools, for example, the precision measuring instruments, one district might offer that certification during the first 9 weeks. Then they can take those tools, move them to another district and help out where that district might teach it the second 9 weeks. So they're getting instructors trained in each one of the areas. In our last data analytics certification, Train the Trainer, we did, I think there were 3 instructors from 3 of those districts, so that there are instructors in place in each district to help teach those. But again, the hands-on part, they can rotate those resources around and kind of make the most of the opportunity as far as the funding side of it by pooling their resources.
This is Ann Ma. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So Dan, if some of the high schools wanted to get more involved in this, would you be the person to contact?
I can be, and yes, I can help put them in touch with KS or with NC3, different industry, the corporate partners, for example, Train. There's a gentleman, a project or program manager for Train for our certifications that I work with. His name's Michael McAllis. He coordinates the certifications for Train. Snap-on has somebody else. So it's an industry partner that each school can work with depending on what the certs are. But yeah, I can help steer. Hannah Peltier is the lady, the NC3 staff member that helps with membership. But if there's anybody that has questions, sure, Ann, you can direct them to me and I'd be glad to help connect them with the right people.
Okay, well, I guess Shelley, you probably have his contact information then.
I had some questions, Dan. So you said there's no cost to students for the certifications, which is wonderful. And a school can be a certification center. So obviously there's some limited number of certifications that they can offer, and there's no
Right.
cost to them for joining. Like where's the point
So-
that they're
so
no
if I-
longer
Hi, Sandy. My name is Heather
certifications?
Morgan, and I just had a phone call from you.
So if I go back to this slide here, the certification centers, here's kind of the introductory set of certifications that can be offered. Again, these are across a number of different industries. So these certifications can be open if a school wanted to get.
It fried the internet and the air card.
Heather, you
and
need to
it
mute.
fried everything in my neighbor's house.
Heather
and
Morgan,
my
you
other
need to
neighbor's
mute.
house, and my dehumidifier, and like the TV.
So these certifications here, if a school is a certification center, these certifications could all be offered. The cost would be to have an instructor trained for them to attend the NC3 Train the Trainer. And again, it's professional development. It's simply offered from an industry perspective as compared to maybe a little more content or educational focus. This is the real world application. It's the hands-on training. And again, when an instructor has completed the NC3, the Train the Trainer, and they've taken the assessment, then those instructors are able to begin teaching this certification with their students. NC3 provides the assessment materials, much like the manual that I shared, and NC3 provides the assessment. So it's the industry is signing off that these students have met the industry requirements to earn that certification. And then if they want to expand on the number of, if they want to get into Lincoln Electric and welding, so forth, that's where, again, the statewide agreement with the Board of Regents helps schools become a leadership school.
Are those trainings, are those offered online? Is there a particular place that those instructors have to go to for that training? What's that format look like?
Most of them have been in person up until this last year, and NC3 quickly transitioned to being able to do more of them virtually. So at this point, it is a combination virtual and in person, with a lot of these certifications being hands-on and using instruments and tools. There is some hands-on training that's needed, but we can go, the nc3.net is the NC3 website. But I can help as far as steering. It shows all the different upcoming Train the Trainers, as far as when those events are hosted, where they're hosted. But I can help if there's any questions on that. If anybody would like, shoot me an email. I'll be glad to help.
Thank you. Just looking at my list of things that I jotted down here. How, Dan, are these certifications, how are they promoted to business and industry so that if I'm a business owner, I'm aware that this certification exists and that it has value to me to be excited when someone applies that says they have this certification?
I would have to visit with NC3 in terms of the marketing. I can tell you the certifications are developed based on industry need. So these are high-level certifications as far as what skill sets are needed in industry. So let's say, again, it's going back to that precision measuring instruments. If a student is certified that they can use the tape and rule, or they can use the calipers for precision measurement, those employers are going to recognize if it's the ag dealer down the street, the implement dealer, and we're doing mechanical work on ag implements, or I'm in aviation, they're going to be familiar with those tools that are being used. So these are high level, basic level, or foundational level skill sets.
Currently, Dan, are any of these certifications recognized by KSDE when they keep track of students who have earned industry recognized credentials as part of our post-secondary success metrics? Are any of the NC3 certs counted toward that?
The NC3 certs are not on the list of industry recognized certifications. As we look more at post-secondary success, I think that's something, again, we need to look at and consider. I have had several, in fact, in May, the USA Kansas conference, I had a couple of superintendents visit with me as far as what would it take, because they realize that, I mean, these certifications have meaning in industry. So what would it take to have them added to the list and count towards post-secondary success rates? I mean, if we can help accelerate careers for our students, what's it take to do that? So I think that's all part of this conversation.
Two last questions. Advantage Kansas, we really began to have conversation at our last meeting about taking this huge undertaking as we move our vision forward for creating, best in the Midwest and developing this talent pipeline for a robust economy, focusing a little more narrowly at first on information technology as a sector that really has great potential to drive the Kansas economy forward.
Right.
So if we go down that IT road first, what are those certifications that exist currently that you would say, yes, I see alignment with that? And what's the process if industry would want to develop an additional certification, if there's a new business partner that wanted to come forward with NC3 and say, hey, we want to develop a curriculum and a certification related to our IT needs?
And there is more and more of that happening all the time. As far as new certifications, the virtual leadership summit we just had last week, when I mentioned the SWIFT, the apps and the coding and the micro foundation, each year I've attended that virtual leadership summit now for 3 years, and each year they have had new certifications that have been added on. The data analytics was brand new just this past year with Train. As industry looks, I mean, the needs in industry are continually changing. So as we identify those skill sets are needed, that's where there is value to this industry partnership, working with education on how can we help provide the training and how can we speed up workforce development with those public-private partnerships. So yeah, industry is able to work with NC3 to bring new certifications to put those in place.
All right, thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. Anything else, or I can stop share if there aren't any other slides that I need to go back to reference.
That looks like it. Thank you so much, Dan, for being
You're
with
welcome.
us this morning and sharing that information. It was very valuable. And as I continue to hear more about NC3, every time I learn more and understand more, very, very exciting. So again, thank you for taking time to be with us this morning.
You're welcome. I appreciate the chance to share. I will send out a follow-up email to the group just so they have my email handy if there's questions, and I'll include a couple of links in that. You're welcome.
All right, next with us this morning, we have Bill Nisley, who is with the Kauffman Foundation, who is going to give us an update on the Real World Learning Initiative. So Bill.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good to see so many folks on. These meetings have been really beneficial because for me, I'm seeing so much similarity in this work that's going on. Dan's presentation, terminology, and the different kinds of opportunities for students is very much in sync with the Kaufman Real World Learning Initiative. We just have a new quick sketchbook that we just came out with, so I think I'm going to have you look at that. Just let me make sure my audio is on, so you should be able to hear it.
I'm Mark Bedell, Superintendent of the Kansas City Public School District.
And I'm Anita Newton. I serve as the Chief Innovation Officer of Community America. We're a credit union based in Kansas City.
Real world learning allows for our students to have a practical experience at what the market has to offer. It focuses on making sure that we have done our part to prepare kids for college, life, and career.
As students try to navigate the new economic and job landscape, we have students graduating that don't have the requisite skills needed to fill those jobs. This next generation, they are the most innovative, expressive, thoughtful, with one notable exception. They have difficulty making the transition from school to work.
It's time to move away from this chalkboard era of teaching and learning. We need to be modern because the world and the economy that these kids are graduating into is not a traditional model.
If you give students the opportunity to be introduced to a problem that they don't know how to solve, and you give them space to figure it out, that student would graduate knowing that they have the curiosity, the courage, and the ability to enter the workforce and make a much greater impact.
We ask business folks to come in and work with kids that have an interest in that particular profession and to become an adult advocate. To allow our kids to do internships and externships, step up and help us by mentoring so that we can make sure that our kids truly are workforce ready when they graduate.
I honestly don't understand why every single business isn't chomping at the bit to take advantage of this initiative. Because this kind of a program is a secret weapon to staying viable and competitive in the marketplace. Our businesses will not survive if we don't have talented students who have these skills that real world learning teaches.
If we are to succeed, it's going to be because the community came together. And we think that this is a way to truly make Kansas City a great city for all.
So that is the extent of my presentation because I think it did just a great job of explaining everything. But I will go into a little bit more depth because Shelley wants me to take up this time. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen there. Thumbs up if that's good. Okay. So again, I don't want to be redundant regarding what you may or may not know about real world learning. I understand this is a knowledgeable group that I'm visiting with around the topic of work-based learning in general. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of sort of background terminology. So before we dive into the scope and scale, I want to start by defining the concepts. And you're going to see so many similarities, which is why I think I find this so fascinating. At the simplest level, real world learning is a myriad of experiences that help students connect with what they're learning in school to the outside world, to the world of work. It is learning in context. It's in context of work. It's in context of students' own interests, their own passions and their own strengths. And that's the crux of the importance of this work, is what we're finding. In fact, that's the research that this work is based on. Real world learning prepares students, and this is really a restatement of what I just said. We heard the term essential skills. Dan used it, we heard it last week, critically important. And these experiences then leading to students to be inspired in a field that they have interest and aptitude in. That's the point, or the idea behind the entire initiative, recognizing that if we can inspire them in an area that they have interest and aptitude, they're going to go on and be more likely to be successful. And Ashley said it perfectly here, I think. So at its core, real world learning is the experiences and interactions that help students connect what they're learning inside school to work, learning, and life outside of school. It's different than career exploration experiences. It is a progression of opportunities that help students define their path through exploring and engaging and immersing in work as part of their learning process. In doing so, the content in the classroom becomes more relevant through context provided by these real world applications. So if you think about it, why should I know this, right? We always hear that in the classroom. What's the importance of this? When will I ever use this? Well, the experiences students have through real world learning provide that context so they understand that. And hence, and then that again goes back to motivation. So reiterating the term market value asset, or restating it in this case, we think that was originally coined from Susan Wally, the Prep KC, and I know Susan is well known in the Kansas area, but both in the states of Kansas and Missouri, for the work that she's done. So these are the currency that real world learning is based on, is a good way to characterize it. Students acquire market value asset experiences. These market value asset experiences fall into four main categories: work experiences, so that's internships, industry recognized credentials, entrepreneurial experiences, and college credit. And it's not just any college credit, it's college credit in multiple successions, multiple courses in the same field, so that students walk away with a breadth of knowledge and a depth of knowledge in one particular area, ideally the area in which they want to ultimately have a career. Real world learning opportunities help prepare students by giving them market value asset, these skills, the knowledge, the mindsets, and ultimately we've heard essential skills as well. The belief is that these assets should be obtained in high school. We should provide opportunities, very much aligned with what Dan said, provide students opportunities while they're in high school, so that they can more clearly define what it is that they want to do, what it is they're excited about, what it is that motivates them, so that when they leave high school with their diploma, they also have a better idea what they're wanting to do and will more likely be successful in that pursuit. These definitions, these MBA definitions, first of all, let me just say this: the links to many of the resources I'm going to talk about have been given to Shelley, and she's placed some, I think, in the area for resources. So you can acquire those anywhere there, and also on the Kaufman website. Each of these categories of MBAs has a specific definition. It's a threshold, if you will. These experiences that students, real world learning experiences that students integrate into their classes and otherwise are are supposed to be substantial. They're supposed to be impactful. They're supposed to be, they're supposed to have depth to them so that they make a profound experience on the lives of students. And that in so doing, they can acquire some of those essential skills. However, we recognize as we get into this, that over time, those definitions are going to change. They're going to morph, and that's okay. We really, we want to acknowledge that and recognize that as we learn more, the definitions should change. So high school graduates need more than just academic skills to be future ready. We know that these essential skills listed were developed in 2018 in the Kansas City area with a group called KC Rising, working with educators and business folks, developing the Kansas City Portrait of a Graduate. Just recently, this is one of the important documents, which you may already have seen, which the DeBruce Foundation and KC Rising's report that just came out in April of 2021, identifying essential skills. And ultimately, we think that these dovetail very well into the Real World Learning Initiative. That the idea behind market value asset, if you think about real world learning as the initiative, the currency is the market value asset, and the skills acquired by participating in that currency, market value asset currency, are these essential skills. You all have seen this before. We know that in all states, frankly, but our states for sure, Kansas and Missouri, there's a gap between the number of students who go to college, graduate high school and go to college, and the number of students that even complete a year in school. And this is not an opinion on whether or not they even should be in college. It's simply saying there's a problem. So acknowledgement that there's a problem. And one of the hypotheses around the Real World Learning Initiative is that the acquisition of those market value assets will help students understand better what it is that they want to do, what they want to spend their lifetime doing, the career fields, and so that they will go to college and persist to graduation, or they'll decide not to go to college and take a career job or training route that is different than higher education. But whatever their endeavor, they're more likely to be successful. That's sort of the hypothetical science behind the initiative. And certainly as we move forward, the entering into year 3, I believe we will are just now starting to collect data, and so we're anxious to see what that data looks like, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. So right now we have 30 plus school districts in the Kansas City metropolitan area, both Kansas and Missouri side. That represents 100,000 high school students that could potentially be impacted by this initiative. So one of the things that excites me about this initiative, not only do I believe in the work because I've witnessed it firsthand in the school districts that I worked for as a superintendent, building principal, and even teacher. I think the potential to impact 100,000 students is unique. The scope and size of the initiative is unique. There are 3 cohorts. Currently, cohort 1 is the green school districts, cohort 2 is the blue, and then the yellow is cohort 3. And these districts all have signed on to an audacious goal. And that audacious goal is that by 2030, and the clock is ticking, by 2030, every high school student will graduate with a diploma plus at least 1 market value asset. And thereby, those students have this deep, immersive, rich, work-based experience that not only provides them with a better idea of what they want to do and what they're good at and what jazzes them up, but also provides employers with an opportunity to see firsthand talent. There is the original idea behind this initiative was that if Kaufman could get 2 or 3 schools, maybe 4 school districts to participate in this, they would be doing good. What the indicator for us is that all of these districts have signed on to this collaborative and routinely work together in that collaborative manner. School administrators, building principals, and teachers sharing ideas back and forth about how to integrate market value assets into the classroom and give students these experiences. Sharing ideas about employers and how to approach employers about potential internships or client-based projects. And so the power, it really is in the collaborative. And I have to say that the other component that's just really inspirational, I think, is that this is a collaborative between suburban schools, rural schools, and urban schools all together with a real focus around equity. For the real world learning folks, we are saying all means all, because we recognize in this current environment, we're leaving a lot of students behind for a lot of different reasons. And what that means is there's unrecognized talent there. And if best in the Midwest is ever going to be achieved with manufacturing, with business and industry, we have to utilize all of that talent, 100% of that talent. And so that's the strategy behind all means all, and all students by 2030 with at least 1 market value asset. So to do that, we have really, the initiative runs 2 parallel investment strategies. One is with the districts, and that's the one that everybody seems to know about. The districts, as I indicated to you, are in cohort 1, 2, or 3. This coming school year, the first cohort of schools will be entering into the grant implementation year 3. It's a little confusing, but if you think of it as a design year, the last cohort, the 3rd cohort, is currently in their design year. They've been granted dollars to plan for this initiative, and then this next year for them will be the starting gate, if you will. Think about a marathon race, and the end of the marathon is 2030, where all students will graduate with at least 1 market value asset. Their year 2 is actually the start line, and the gun goes off and the marathon runners start running, and they have to 2030 to get there. But there are only 3 years of granting while the race is running. So, and it's seed money. It's not full. It is not a full dollar amount of what it would cost to implement this program. So you might be thinking, well, what's the rationale behind that for Kaufman? I mean, it comes down, as a superintendent, as a school superintendent who started with the first cohort and was a practicing superintendent, it wasn't as much as about the money as it was the value in the work, the benefit that we derive from participating, having students acquire these market value assets and participating in them. The collaborative was far greater than the dollar amount. And so if it wasn't, this thing would not perpetuate until 2030. And so that's a critical component. The other side of this granting is connecting people with the region, equipping employers and education, providing data collection, research practices. And so the plan is being developed as we're going, if you will, based upon what we're learning in the process. And when I briefly touched on data, I want to say that Kaufman has hired an independent data consultant because we felt that it was really important that that data collection be separated from the Kaufman Foundation and be separated from the school districts. And so school districts are providing from their data sets, these school districts are providing information about their students, and which is a risky proposition these days, as we all know. And so we have actually a group of superintendents that are representative from Kansas and Missouri to act as a advisory group on how that data will be used. And so we're looking forward to the acquisition of data and then the analysis and learning from it, and frankly, just moving forward to better the initiative. So this is pretty self-explanatory. It takes both education and employer side in order for this to come to scale. If you think about 100,000 high school students graduating with market value assets, there have to be a lot of opportunities. What we typically think of is for having experiences with employers are internships. And what I would say to you, and that's the thing that scares our school districts at the onset. How could we get so many internships for every high school kid? There's no way that can happen. There are other opportunities as well, and the client-based projects are really good ones. What we are seeing in some schools that are really leading the way is that client-based projects are integrated. Again, back to what Dan said, client-based projects are integrated into everyday core curriculum classes. And we think that's really the solution to the goal of all students by 2030. Because, and what we're seeing are some English 3 and 4 teachers that are taking what they're teaching students within their curriculum and then pulling in client connected projects of business and industry. And those business and industry folks have, they have that list of things that they have to get done, but they can't ever get to the 2 or 3 things that are on the bottom of the list. They hand those over to high school students and say, help me solve this problem. And then present on it communications, both verbal, written, and virtual, actually, on these client-connected projects. And so these students go to work on this project in a team setting and present to the employers as a team. And quite often the employer says, well, you didn't quite get it right, so let's go back to the drawing board. And so they learn about failure as a team, and that's part of the valuable experience. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that those employers really derive great benefits from those students, and students likewise do. TJ is another example of a student that really has seen the value of the experience in the workforce. So as we progressed along, and as this initiative is really taking hold, what we're seeing is the employer side of the equation. For those who have participated in the last couple of years and really come to understand what the initiative is about, they are very excited, as we saw in the video, because they're finding value, and oftentimes they're hiring these students for summer help in some cases. In other cases, we're even seeing where they've paid for additional training for the students so that students can come to school, and in other cases, even college level training as well. So they're finding the talented students, and they're really engaging with the initiative. It is a community builder, frankly. So I want to clarify, oftentimes we think of Kaufman as like the house or the hub that dispenses out business and industry that can provide a warehouse for these experiences. And that's not the case at all. All politics is local, and all real world learning is local. So market value assets have, and finding opportunities for students is really the job of the school. And what we have seen most frequently with the use of the Kaufman money is that school districts are hiring an individual to be that liaison, business to school liaison, provide opportunities for students and the like. And then on the student side of it, it's really the growth of the initiative and the continual metamorphosis of the initiative. And every day, it seems like we're like, okay, well, we made this mistake here, so let's not do that anymore. And we're going down a different path. Meanwhile, we're seeing the initiative grow, and we're seeing the excitement within the schools continue to expand. And so an example of that would be superintendents are engaged in this work. They're saying, yes, we think this is important. Then they go back and they get their board members engaged in it. And their board members see firsthand the value. And sometimes it's even their own children that benefit from these experiences. And in so doing, they write the idea, the concept behind real world learning and 100% market value asset attainment into the district's strategic plan. So all of the districts, I would say, that are in cohort 1 have probably already done that. And then once it's in the strategic plan, that trickle down effects works because principals, high school principals, part of their evaluation is based upon progression towards implementation of real world learning. And so there's sort of an organizational motivation to do that. And then that it is at that time that teacher training is reoriented, and we're seeing integration of these kinds of experiences into the classroom setting, which is really what it takes to be successful. So year 3, we are still far away from achieving the goal, right? We've seen a tremendous amount of progress. It's the largest and so far most successful initiative of its kind that I've been associated with in my 32-year career. But there's a long ways to go as well. And what I would say is, from an organizational standpoint, there's a push and pull tension always behind this concept of we really have to get this done by 2030. And but if you push too hard, the thing will collapse on itself. But if you don't push hard enough, then you're not going to acquire the momentum needed to sustain districts after funding has been completed. So it really is something that we have to carefully monitor. All of these links here are in the information that I gave Shelley, so you should be able to readily access them. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bill. And I believe people can go onto our Google Drive and into our resources, and that you can see the Kaufman. I think there's a folder in there called Kaufman Real World Learning Resources, something like that, and that those should all be there. I will go check and make sure that I think everyone can access them. But I believe that to be the case.
One of the things that we do, that we have been doing, is convening superintendents and their lead design person for Real World Learning Initiative on a regular basis. And Tom Vander Ark and Getting Smart has been working with the Kaufman Foundation as part of this initiative. And his team has provided a tremendous amount of knowledge and resources. If you go to the Kaufman website that I just put in the chat, and you click on resources, you can pull up all of the webinars, the documents downloaded, and then I think under peer-to-peer learning are the webinars that have occurred in the past, and they're just really high quality if you want to find out more about any one particular topic. Oftentimes they are associated with a certain kind of market value asset. So.
I have a question. Actually, two questions. So the cost of this initiative is essentially turning out to be, whether it's grant funded or district funded, essentially a point person in the district to implement this work and connect with employers. Is that correct?
In general, Heather, I would say that is correct. Because it is what most school districts have chosen to do. What's important to note is that the only goal that this initiative has is 100% MVA attainment by 2030, with clear definitions of what an MVA is. So we know that the bar is set high. We leave the how up to the school district. And so the solution for a school district, how to get there, is unique to them, and really is a function of their location and the kind of business and industry that is within their geographic region. But that's a long answer to say, yes, generally that's what they're doing, is they're hiring these individuals to be liaisons.
That kind of led into my second question, which was sort of the rural urban equity issue, which you kind of touched on with your question. So could you just talk to us about what some of the differences you're seeing in your pilot or your cohorts for what the rural versus urban school districts are doing?
That's a great question. I appreciate that. Frank Harwood's on here. I can see him, and he's involved in the initiative. So he's a trusted partner, and he may be able to chime in as well. In general, I'll say that what we're finding is, and what certainly, I'm going to back up 1 minute. What we tell school districts is not to really overthink how that 100% attainment is going to occur, but jump into it, set goals. Backwards map from 2030 is the best way to do it, and say we want this percent of market value asset graduates by 2025, and then 2027, and then cleanup is up to 2030. But when they get in there and they start to develop a more robust relationship with business and industry, and in some cases it's not, as you noted, it's not a lot of business and industry, specifically in rural areas. There are other opportunities as well. Cities and municipalities make great partners. And a school district itself is oftentimes, especially in those rural schools, and certainly the case in Kearney where I am, the largest business by far in the community. And so tapping into that business operation from a finance standpoint, from a communication standpoint, from a HVAC physical plant standpoint, it can be absolutely amazing. And some of Dan's, as an example, some of Dan's training equipment is in Kearney School District, and how we monitor those is and measure CO2 levels in the air in the classrooms is an important function, and having students be able to tap into that and see changes in classrooms when you have 3 hours worth that's full of kids is an amazing thing. And so there seems to be, at this particular stage where we are at, always opportunities for kids to solve problems, meaningful problems, in a deep, immersive way. Frank, did you want to add anything to?
Yeah, what I was going to say is that to Heather's first question is that the Kauffman funding is really more as a way to help get organized and to learn more about what's possible. Most districts are already doing many of the things that are that would generate market value assets. For example, one of them is is 9 college credit hours. So one of the things we have to do is how do we keep track of that? How do we move forward with it? A big part is our internships, which really don't cost the districts very much. It's things you're trying to do. It's establishing the relationships. So in a lot of ways, the Kauffman Foundation is seed money to help get things organized. It's never the intention to fund it long term. Those were already things that districts are doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think KSDE tracks or the regents do the college credits that kids take statewide in high school. But I have a question, and I wish Stacy or Natalie was here. I'm trying to figure out if there's an intersection between what Kauffman is doing in the Kansas City area and what we're doing with our work-based learning pilot all over the state that we're trying to scale up now, which essentially does a lot of the same thing to try to get kids into internships and connect with businesses. And I wondered, Bill, if you had work, do you work with KSDE at all about what they're doing with their work-based learning project?
Yes, and it's really more of a mutual communication and support, because the two initiatives are very similar. And this is really powerful work. There is a great meta-analysis, which I also think I included in the information, out of a professor out of Iowa did around intrinsic motivation and interest, aptitudes, values. And when students find those, when they find out what it is that they're good at, and not just what they're good at, but what they really like and enjoy, then, and they pursue a career in it, then their stamina towards completion is significantly increased. This is where grit comes from, right? And
Right.
so anything that Kauffman can do, and those of us that are working on behalf of Kauffman to assist in any other related initiative, Kansas for sure, we're all about doing that. And I think sharing best practices is one of those, and resources as well.
Yeah, well, I know the state board would agree with you. That's one of the reasons why we changed our accreditation standards to include that every student had to have an individual plan of study based on a career interest by 8th grade. So they get more out of high school and they have some idea what they want to explore before they get out of high school. And also why we're tracking the high schools 2 years, tracking students 2 years after they get out of high school to see, are the schools encouraging them to get training or to go to college? Another one I know, and I don't know if Shelley, our group, or Talent Ready has this one, or maybe it's Jumpstart, but the State Board of Ed and the Board of Regents a few years ago introduced a bill to the legislature to provide the first 15 hours of college credit free to every high school student in Kansas. And it didn't get off the ground. It got through the Senate and died in the House. And the thing was only like 30 million a year. It's like that ought to be a no-brainer, because, we were all over the board across the state. I mean, maybe in Johnson County, you could go to Johnson County Community College, but you had to pay $100 an hour. Well, that cut out a whole lot of kids. And in places in other parts of the state, kids have no access at all to college, but we can make that happen. So, that's one of those market value assets that we really believe in. And even if we could only start small by offering 3 hours free, we should be doing that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that particular asset and how to make that grow, the college credit. Or is Kauffman focused on just, any of these would be fine?
So
Right, could you?
To your first point, the intersection between real world learning and work-based learning, we get confused about which acronym we're supposed to use sometimes. DeSoto is actually a work-based learning regional site. and then also involved in real world learning. So there is a lot of overlap. We got involved with work-based learning first, but then because of the metro-wide Missouri and Kansas portion of the Kaufman, we decided to go ahead and get involved in both. So they are very connected. We also are, as part of our individual plans of study, are incorporating the market value assets as something students keep track of as they move through high school, so that that's one of the ways we'll keep track of what they're getting there. One of the things we're finding when it comes to just college credit is, so as you know, we're opening a new career and technical education center this fall. And so one of the things as we were building that is that in our district, what we're faced with is everybody thinks that's a great idea. We need to increase trades and non-college bound opportunities, but my kid needs to go to college. So we're struggling with, through our IPSs, helping parents be supportive of plans that students want to follow so that they can be more successful. So it's the market value asset of college credits is great if that actually helps get you where you want to go. So that's a little bit of how we make that work together is how are those college credits or a certification that Dan talked about or something else, how is that getting you closer to your long-term goal? So that's my thought on, does every student need 15 credit hours? It depends on their goal.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Good
Very
point.
good. Thank you.
Frank, thank you for sharing your perspective, as DeSoto is a wonderful example of a district that's trying to meld the work-based learning initiative with KSDE and the real world learning together.
Shelley, if I can just add one comment there related to what Frank was sharing, and I'm glad to see market value assets and industry recognized certifications becoming more a part of the conversation. I taught anatomy and physiology for 33 years. Just students could get 5 hours of dual credit through Sterling College, and I encouraged them to do that. But I also shared with the students that 5 hours of college credit, there needs to be a purpose, and it might help fulfill gen ed requirements, or if you were going into a health sciences career, then obviously there's content based. But I said those 5 hours in and of themselves don't open the career door. Now, if they take what they're learning through the class and complete a CNA certification, that industry recognized certificate means something in terms of a health career. That CNA certification helps open the door. So I think it's important that we start matching up as often as we can what the skill-based assets are that students are learning as a part of this integrated learning, because that's what industry recognizes.
Agreed. Well said. And if you then join what Frank said, Dan, with what you said, that you have and some sort of an interest inventory. Kaufman is sponsored youth science pilot to help students, and it's one of many that potentially could work. Lots of school districts are already doing that on their own. Help students not only understand what they're good at, but where their real interest lies. And where their values are, because it's one thing to be good at a job, it's another one to be good at it and like it, right? And then tailoring their market value asset around those things that they're good at and they like is really the linchpin.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us today, both Bill and Dan. I know we're getting close to 11:30, which was kind of our scheduled end time. Are there any other questions or comments that people would like to make? All right, hearing none. Thank you, gentlemen, both, and thank you everyone for participating. And as soon as we have these this recording, I will post it and send it out by email to everyone on our group so that you can rewatch it, or others who were not able to join us live will be able to catch up with that. I did go to our Google Drive folder, and I confirmed if you want to find these resources in that manner, as opposed to going directly to the Kauffman Foundation, you can go to the Advantage Kansas folder. You should have a link to, and then it's the AKCC Jumpstart, and then subdivision or subfolder there is reports and resources, and from there is one that's called like Kauffman Real Learning.
Hey, Shelley, this is Ann.
Yes.
Hey, would you care if I shared the video with my superintendents? I think someone would find the NC3 presentation particularly helpful.
No, you can share any of the resources. I think that's why we're on this committee, is to be spokespeople for all of these initiatives and information that we're learning.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you to everyone. Have a great rest of your Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.